Okay, so right now I'm in the sound studio because I wanted to record, um, I guess, not a critical. Well, technically, the reflection is supposed to be critical, but I'm just gonna say it's a reflection for now. Because instead of writing it down, I realized, like, it's faster. Like, the fastest way of communication is through voice. So I thought I could just record my reflection with my voice. Even though I already have some reflection that is text based. But I also, after the mid or during the mid unit review, I was asking questions about like my reflection. Like, I'm aware that I haven't really done it much reflection so far, so uh, I was hoping to get on track with doing that after the mid unit review because for the first half of the unit, I've kind of just been focusing on the explore and experiment part of the project, which I've done through just attending a bunch of workshops and workshops outside of the long core and short core workshops. I've attended workshops on the open access sign-ups that appear in our emails from time to time. And I think I may have attended some like events outside of that as well, like the interchange events, for example, though I'm not sure how critical they are. But I did find some of them to be useful. I mean, the interchange events for my careers or industry folder, specifically the talk about uh, graphic medicine. But I believe I've already discussed that in one of my notes. So I said what I needed to say about how I've kind of just been focusing on workshops for half of this project, and that is because that's just how much time I've had. I've decided to invest most, if not all, my time into these workshops and attending them. So I would book workshops so that I would have at least one workshop each day. Or there were some days where I would have multiple workshops. So that left me with no other time to do other things. Hence why my, what's it called? The work that we do in our studio time, I have done that, of course, because I have attended my allocated time slots for studio time. However, it's very clear when you look at the work that I've produced so far that you could say it's lacking, and that is the reason why, because of me choosing to attend workshops in time outside of my studio time rather than use my time outside of studio time to do more studio time. However, after the whole mid unit review, I was told that my reflection doesn't necessarily need to be extremely long like how it was in my previous workshop. So that changed my mind slightly about maybe what I should be focusing on now for the rest of the project now that half of it has been done. well, my primary focus before that was to just spend the rest of the unit reflecting on what I've done and documenting, or at least because I've already been documenting my work, I have photos and video evidence of the workshops that I've attended. It's just that's all that I have, and I was hoping to add on to that by explaining and describing each picture and video footage, because I haven't really done that yet, and that would take me quite a lot of time. So, even though I was told that this I don't need to do a lot of reflection, but rather I should display key key moments in my work, key moments in my project, and maybe like moments where I've changed my mind about things. I still want to further explain those photos and videos. However, yes, I'm aware that I might get too deep into that. Okay, let me pause and gather my thoughts because I'm going to start rambling. Okay, so this is the plan. Um, I'm just going to audibly reflect for each photo and video footage that I have, so that if so that as I'm talking about it audibly, it won't hopefully take as much time, and I will be able to cut straight to the point. Before I start that though, something else that was discussed during the mid unit review was what else? I guess my studio work. Yeah, I was encouraged to just continue doing that and focus on my studio work, which I am planning to do now that I I will not be having as much workshops, though I still will have some. I will have time to do more studio work. However, I think I'll focus on doing my audible reflection first, and then I'm going to do my studio work simultaneously as I'm trying to do the industry folder and finish off the like other projects like the essay and the mini essay and the watch, read, listen, visit project. Also, if I'm going to discuss my work broadly and on a general scale, then I can do that now. Because in the mid unit review, although we had 20 minutes to discuss pretty much what I've been doing so far, I found that that wasn't enough time to go deeply into what I've been doing, but rather I just showed a couple pieces of work that I've done, that being primarily paintings, um, and then just discuss my ideas. So I guess I can talk about those ideas here right now. So at the beginning, right, I was looking at a more drawing realistically point of view. Or that was like the purpose behind why I was trying to paint faces or just like human anatomy in general. I'm not really sure why I decided to paint the face instead of other body parts, considering I think I can paint expressions quite well. I guess it just didn't come to me at the time. Yeah, I don't know. I just didn't think about it. Um, but I did start looking at trying to do similar practices and drawing exercises that maybe the old, quote unquote, old masters used. So I did research online, primarily through like videos on any exercises that they did or techniques that were used. However, at one point when I was painting the drawing of one of the staff members, that was. I think I made a mistake which I didn't really like, and I was thinking it could be fixed at the moment. So, what I'm specifically referring to is the green that I started adding around the face. Um, I was just trying to add a bit of abstraction in the background with these like spiky forms, but it didn't really work. I think I intentionally used like a green against a red because I knew those are complementary colors, but I didn't think it would clash that much. I thought it would just clash a little bit so that it would create a nice visual focal point, but that didn't really work. Maybe because both of the colors were intense, both the red and the green. However, yeah, I tried to remove that then by putting paint, like wet, well, not paint. I mean like wet water onto the canvas where I put the green paint to maybe like brush it off. And that ended up making interesting marks. I do admit that I do like that part of the unintentional experimentation. Um, so, although I like the marks which came out by me trying to rub the paint in like a circular motion, which I believe I have a video footage of, it, like, it didn't fit the painting, in my opinion. So, at that point, I didn't know what to do next. So I kind of just let that painting sit on the side for a bit and started to think about something else. So in the meantime, I was trying to maybe find ways that I could attend more live drawing sessions because they were on once or twice a month maximum. And considering I've been booking out a lot of workshops, um, there there ended up being clashes in my timetable, which caused me to not be able to attend as much of, or not all of, the live drawing sessions that were available to me. So I was reaching out to the Munnings drawing studio itself, asking for the timetabled sessions that are going on throughout the week or the months. And the only response I really got, which I do have email evidence of this in my supporting documentation, I believe, where they just responded with my own courses Actually, I don't know why I'm talking about this because I already have the emails and the emails are self explanatory, so I don't really need to talk about this. But the point is that I was trying to get access to maybe more of those sessions, so I was reaching out. Well, I still need to reach out to the staff members of the different other courses that do the live drawing sessions that my course doesn't have access to, and ask them for permission if I'm able to join other courses, pretty much live drawings. So that was my attempt at doing more technical drawings or increasing my technical drawing skills by attending more of these sessions, because I found out I found that using references is not the best way to learning um, the human body very well, because compared to live drawing, you only have one perspective of a figure in that moment, in that photo, whatever photo it may be, versus in in the physical environment where you have a model, you are able to look at it from all sorts of perspectives, whilst in a photo, you can't really change the perspective of the photo whenever you want. And you can't make the model change their pose. And I doubt that you can find online photos of the same model from different perspectives. And from different angles. Because extreme angles are something that I'm interested in as well. Like, so I thought, okay, before I go on to that train of thought, let me just finish this one. So, oh, but now I forgot what I was going to say. Ugh. Okay, so there probably are. I said that there probably is not, but I believe there are photo references online where there are models captured from all sorts of different perspectives. But I believe those perspectives are limited, and that limitation is preventing me from wanting to use those references. But now, as I'm saying that, I'm realizing how that might sound not useful, and I might be limiting myself by thinking that is a limit to me. But also, I'm not really sure how to access those resources myself. So, another way that I was thinking I could obtain a reference that is much more accurate to a life drawing model, which can be turned around in different perspectives, was using 3D models online, which maybe I could input into a 3D model software like Blender, and then just rotate the model so that it would fit the perspective that I want to reference in that moment. So I will be looking into finding 3D models. However, the poses which these models have are also significant to me, considering I've been looking into dynamic movement or energetic poses, which the throwing workshop really actually helped me with. At first, I was kind of repulsed by the topic being more sport orientated and I found it boring. But later, I noticed that sports have poses which are much more energetic and have much more of an oomph to them than normal poses. So actually, sports is relevant to study human anatomy because when one plays sports, they are able to achieve more vibrant poses than you would usually be able to. Um, yes. And so, a reason why I was interested in looking into more dynamic poses rather than just studying the normal and basic ones is because it related to the theme behind my work, which, as I written down, was Christianity. And you may think that is a strange connection to make, maybe, and you may not see the correlation, which is understandable. So the connection to me is like emotional. So I'd say the bridge between dynamic poses and Christianity would be the emotions. So in sports, you have these. Well, sports makes you feel very high if you're very into it, and it gives you like this sense of dopamine. So I guess you could say that is a similar kind of sense. Well, not sense. It's a similar vibe that you can get from Christianity. Or as a Christian myself, I do find that I relate to, because I've played sports myself, and actually recently I went to a ping pong club where actually I've received kind of insight whilst playing ping pong, which is a sport, about Christian like insights. So, for example, there is an image that I drew of playing ping pong with Jesus, which to me like represented like having a conversation with God. But also another insight with when playing ping pong that I received was, yeah, that high that you get from ping pong and the skill that you put in to sports to become good at it or to have maybe more satisfaction in your own performance or just more satisfaction in the gameplay with others. Like it's like a parallel to spiritual. I don't know how to explain it. So in the image, I described it, I think, better than how I'm explaining it now. Um, there is skill you have to put into playing sports, and there is skill that you have to gain by being with God. So spending time with God, like the more you are with God, then that grows you. That increases your skill in the spirit and understanding the things of God and being able to perceive certain things spiritually, and in, your senses are just more aware of certain things, and you're able to connect with God better the more time you spend with Him, and the more you listen to Him, and the more you read the Bible and what He is saying, because the Bible is just what God says. So it's like I found sports to be somewhat of a parallel to spiritual truths. And yeah, it's difficult to explain, but I'm hoping that my artwork maybe communicates this idea that I'm trying to express better than how I'm trying to communicate it now. I'm hoping that someone may understand this better through looking at my art than maybe listening to me explain it. Though I wanted to include an explanation in my art to maybe help the viewer get the message, because ultimately I do want the viewer to get the message I'm trying to portray, but I would implement that near the end of my work, so that at the beginning it leaves room for interpretation and the viewer having their own experience of the artwork. So what I'm talking about now specifically is what I wanted to do quite recently, ever since I attended like more sound related workshops, was include and incorporate sound into my art. So one way I thought I could do that is by using sensors or maybe speakers to... I think I already discussed this in one of the audio files, so okay, I don't need to talk about this. But going back to the emotional bridge between those two things, I'd say it's emotional because the poses convey an emotion, I believe. So sometimes you don't necessarily need to explain that sports is very emotional. Sometimes you can just see it through the pose that something requires so much intense focus from you just by the way that you're posed and positioned. I have some examples of extreme poses that I looked up online as examples of poses that I'm kind of interested in portraying. And then one way I thought I could make those poses maybe look even more extreme is by changing the angle from which this pose is viewed to a more extreme angle, or could use a fisheye perspective to create a more depth or extreme like perspective. But then there is a possibility that that might look too extreme to the point where you aren't really able to make out what the pose is or the energy behind it, and then you can see maybe more of the distortion than the actual emotion behind the pose, which I want. Actually, I do want to say that I have found in the library a book full of references of the human body from different perspectives. However, I found that each individual picture within that book is so tiny that I can't really learn from it that well. I can't. I just can't see each different body part in relation to other body parts as clearly as I may want to, because the image is so small on the piece of paper. So I believe the book is A3, maybe a little bit smaller. And let's say on each page there would be 15 images. So each image is quite small, and that's not really helpful. So I tried for a minute, and I have video footage of this, I believe, of I tried to draw these images in the book on my sketchbook, and on one hand I did feel like I was learning, but again, it also felt limited. So eventually I stopped using those photo references from that book, and I decided to look at drawing sculptures. So I believe around the uni there are a couple sculpts of bodies. I'm not sure what they're called. I think they're plaster casts, but I'm not sure. So I tried sitting, and I also have a video footage of this. I tried sitting in front of one of these and drawing it, just using observational drawing skills. And once I was done, I tried to maybe sit at a different angle and then draw again. And this was kind of difficult because I wasn't understanding the forms that I was seeing in the human body in these casts. So I felt like I wasn't able to really depict it accurately. Like, yeah, my drawings looked good. Like, my observational drawing skills are good. I can draw what I see well. But I would understand what I'm drawing so that when I draw from imagination, I can draw it similarly to how I drew it when it was in front of me, if that makes sense. Because when I'm going to be drawing these imagined poses or imagined concepts, I imagine I'm not really going to have much access to references or an identical reference to what I'm imagining in my mind, which means that I am going to have to visualize and conceptualize the form of the body in my painting of the body. So I didn't go about doing this yet, but after drawing those sculpts, I stopped doing that because it was too difficult for me, and I thought what I can do next is maybe just look into the human body itself, the structure of it, and understand it more. But other than looking at literal body diagrams, I have no idea how I should go about better understanding the different parts of the body, or like different proportions of the body in relation to other proportions of the body. Yeah, I'm not sure how to do that, how to learn that, other than looking at scientific looking diagrams of the body. Okay, but to talk more about maybe the theme behind my work, because I feel like I maybe haven't explained that as well. Um, yeah, I'm looking at Christianity and the emotions behind the experience of being a Christian, I guess you could say, and what comes with being a Christian, I guess, internally, because it is a very like internal experience. Knowing God can be emotional, even though it isn't always emotional. And I'm trying to express these experiences that I have with God through the things that I see. And the things I see basically point toward what God is like, or what things are like, what is true. I don't know how else to explain it. It's very intuitive. It's a very intuitive process, and the things that I see are often relating to the physical circumstances I'm in. So it's very likely that my work depicts my work, if that makes sense. So I believe one time I went to a careers advisor meeting, and then I was reflecting on the things that were said, and I just saw like a revelation or like an insight about my own life because of God. And I'm not necessarily trying to talk about myself within my work, even though it can look like that. It's more so me depicting maybe my own circumstances or my own thoughts and beliefs, and then like having that represent like a greater, what's it called? You know how one person or one object can represent many objects, or one person can represent many people? That's kind of how I see my work, or like if my work is talking about things I've experienced, that's not just talking about me, it's talking about the whole collective of people who have experienced that thing and people who can relate to it. But also, my work is allegorical in that sense and symbolic, because some people will get that and some people won't. And I like that to an extent, being present in my work, even though I said earlier that I want the audience to get the message, which is still the case. But I do understand that some people won't get the message, even though you tell them the message, if that makes sense. So I guess I'm making my work for the people that will get it. Um, but that's because I already know that those people will get it. But there's some people that you might assume that won't get it, but might still get it. So that's why my work is aimed at everyone. There is no target audience, because conceptual things are for everyone, and everyone can reflect on these things. And anyone out of everyone can understand it. And I can't predict who will and who won't. So it is random, pretty much. So I'm not making my art for Christians necessarily, though I do think that Christians are more likely to understand my work than others. But some Christians may not understand that, and that's fine, because my work is very experience orientated. So some people who have maybe gone through a similar experience, though they are not Christian, may understand it more than other Christians. So it's very fluid in that sense, in terms of who will understand it and who won't. That's why my work is aimed for everyone to see, because I want people to relate and understand the message through the maybe mood I'm trying to convey in my work, through the poses, like I said. I want them to pick up on the emotional part of these experiences. And I'm not necessarily communicating the experiences themselves, but more so the emotion. But to me, the emotion is the experience. So, yeah, it can be hard to separate those two things from each other for me. That's why I'm using those words interchangeably, like experience and emotion, because to me they are almost the same thing, even though I know they're not. So, when I say I depict my experience of being with God, or my experience of understanding certain spiritual things, what I'm saying is that I'm depicting the emotions that are behind that experience. But I do understand that you can't necessarily always understand what the experience in and of itself is simply through engaging with the emotions behind that experience. So that's what my work is doing. So it's vague in the sense that it's not telling you what the actual experience is. It's just like showing you the emotions behind the experience. But I think you can still vaguely understand and grasp what the experience is, even though you don't know what it is. But because of the emotions behind it I'm trying to communicate, I think you can still, to an extent, get what the experience is. But that's where it comes into the more like spiritual and Christian side of things, because like I said, some people will get it and some people don't. And if someone gets it or not, that is dependent on if they are like tuned into the spirit. There's like so many different factors that could affect this. But it's like I'm not the one who will control those factors. Those factors are outside of my control. I'm just, yeah, hopefully that makes sense.